By the infinite grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have gathered here again to praise and glorify Allah Almighty, and also to remember the blessed messengers of Allah alayhi wa sallam. Yesterday we began with the introduction for the month of Ramadan and discussed its virtues and its rewards, and also came to the realization that these virtues and these rewards were solely placed there to please the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, in the month of Ramadan, we must make sure that we strive towards excellence in pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and making sure that we benefit from the gifts that were given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the utmost of our ability. So alhamdulillah, the first Ramadan has passed and today is the second day of Ramadan. So the question that I have is, how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? That's good, mashallah. So, are you still all enthusiastic is the question, good question to ask. You may be slightly weak or dehydrated, but are you still enthusiastic? And we must all remain enthusiastic throughout the days and nights of Ramadan. And if at any moment during the day or during the night you feel that your spirit, you feel that your energy is dwindling, then remember these 5 or 6 things that I'm just going to mention to you now. First thing is that remember these are the days and nights of forgiveness. So when you are desperate for something, then your energy will stay with you. So remember these are the days and nights of forgiveness, so use your energy to seek that forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember that these are the days and nights where you can escape from the fire of hell. These are the days and nights where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you from the fire of hell. So this should give you that extra push and determination to carry on. Similarly, know that every single deed that we do during the day, or whether by the night, they are multiplied by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by 70. So everything that you do is going to have a lot of reward in return. So make sure that you constantly encourage yourself and say, yes, wait a minute, it's worth it. I can do this and I should carry on doing this as well. And similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed the nights as well as the day, especially the night of Qadr for us as well. And lastly, but most importantly as well, that know that the contentment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His satisfaction is in seeing us fulfilling all of the rights of Ramadan. If you want to delight Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make Him happy, then fulfill the rights of Ramadan, fulfill the rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed upon you, for your family members, for your friends, for your neighbors, and all those people that are around you as well. So, whenever you embark upon any new journey, it's always important to have a goal in mind. At the same time, always to have a motto in mind as well. What are you striving towards? So the motto that I thought of is that I will worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like I have never done before. So previous Ramadan, whatever you may have done, however good that you were, or however bad and lacking that you were in your ability, but make a niyyah, make a firm resolve, firm intention, and have the motto and the slogan that I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to become the best Muslim that I can, the best human being that I can be, especially in this month of Ramadan, and please Allah subhanahu keep that in your mind. Yesterday, I'm going to jog your memories, hopefully. I gave you 6 points to remember. Those are the 6 points that the Prophet ﷺ informed us to make sure that we fulfill in the month of Ramadan. So does anybody remember those 6 points? What was the first one?
Praying salah on time.
Absolutely. So making sure you complete your salawat, all your 5 fara'id, as well as your sunnahs and nafil if you have the ability to do so, and also at the earliest time available to you, and also with the jama'ah as well, which is very good. The second thing, does anybody remember another point from the 6 points yesterday? Charity, absolutely well done. That perpetual charity, even if it's little, especially in the month of Ramadan, as long as you do it continuously, this will also reward you abundantly as well. The third point?
Showing love to your parents.
Absolutely. Maintaining the ties of kingship, showing love towards your parents and your family members as well. Excellent. Another one? Forgiveness, yes, which is connected to the dua. Constantly be doing dua for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and for all the Muslim Ummah throughout the world as well. Good. The fifth one, which we do every single night. Tarawih, which is good, yes, related to that, which is reciting the Quran abundantly. And the recitation is listening to the Quran, looking at the Quran, and also reading the Quran as well abundantly in the month of Ramadan. And the last thing which the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in every single version, always try to do what? At least one extra good deed. So apart from your normal routine and your daily schedule, always try to do one extra thing that will gain you the mercy and forgiveness and salvation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So please do every day have this checklist in your mind and make sure you're checking all of these things off, and always strive towards improving yourself and getting more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in today's lecture, I will discuss three main aspects of today's lecture. The first one will be the greatness, the azmat, the sha'an, the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the second will be the world before the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the third aspect will be the actual birth, so the arrival of the Blessed Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we know that the Prophet alaihi wasallam was sent unto all of mankind, to all of creation, because he is the best role. He is the best role model. He has a perfect example, and that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned at the beginning, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala has the highest of morals, highest of virtues, highest of status, highest of character. So if you want to choose any person to emulate, to copy, it can be none other than the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala. We look towards celebrities, we look towards footballers, we look towards so many people throughout the world, and we try to emulate them and copy them because we find something which is attractive in them. However, the thing that is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the perfect character of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala. So if you want to become beloved to Allah, and if you want to become the chosen ones from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you must follow in the footsteps of the chosen one, which is the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala. Similarly, the reason why we're studying the seerah is to increase our love, our mahabbah for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, because you know in the Sahih hadith that I mentioned that your iman will not be complete. Your iman will not reach its zenith, its peak, its ultimate goal until you love the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala more than yourself, more than your family, more than your parents, more than your children. So this is something that we have to strive towards. It's not just enough to give, our statements by our lips and say, yes, we love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, you have to have a physical manifestation of that love as well. You have to strive towards that love of loving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than your own self. Just the way the Sahaba Ikram love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, loving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a positive effect, which is it increases your iman. It strengthens your iman. It makes it more robust. Brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is why we are studying the seerah, try to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Allah ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. We have raised and elevated your maqam, your status and your mention. Every person from the beginning of time before the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's arrival in this dunya, they were talking about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Isa alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, it comes in the Quran, and again, they remind us, they remind their nation. And when the Prophet ﷺ arrived, the message was complete, and even now, we still talk, we still remember and recall the great status in the Ramadan of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's not something that we can put aside. Some people might be thinking that, yes, we'll listen to one lecture or two lectures, that will be enough, and my iman will be, topped up. But no. Knowing the Prophet ﷺ and understanding his life is part of every single moment of our life. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has connected him to himself. When we say the kalima, we have to remember the Prophet ﷺ. When we say the azan, we have to remember the Prophet ﷺ. When we establish the salah, we have to remember the Prophet ﷺ. Every single worship that we do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us again and again and again. Yes, worship me, for I am your Lord, the one and only, yes. But remember my blessed one, remember my chosen one, remember my beloved one, which is none other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in your khutbah, in the salah, in your qiyam, wherever you are, you're constantly reminded of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So don't put him at the back of your mind. Don't make him just remember it when you come to your salah. Every single moment that you are living, remember the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Send salutations upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So coming back to the remit of today's discussion, which is the three parts. The first one, which is the greatness of the Prophet ﷺ, and then talking about the world before the Prophet ﷺ, and then the actual arrival of the Prophet ﷺ. Before I go and delve into that, yesterday, as you will remember and recall, I mentioned one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which related to the multiple universe theory. There's multiple universes, there's multiple dimensions, and some people were looking and they were a bit perplexed, so I thought I'd actually give you the Arabic text and give you the reference to that as well, so you actually realize that, wait a minute, this actually does exist, and it does have some credence to the theory as well. But the ramifications or the hukum, the rulings of this hadith, the fiqh rulings, the aqidah rulings, we won't delve into any of these things, but I'll just share with you the actual hadith itself. So, Imam Ibn Jarir, Imam Ibn Hatim, Imam Hakim, Imam Bayhaqi, all of these people have related the hadith and they have authenticated this hadith itself. And this is related from Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, and as you know, he's a very, very close companion of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala. So he was asked one day when he was translating the verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu allazi khalaqa sab'a samawati wa min al-ardi mislahunna, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the heavens and the earth, and He has created وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ مِثْلَهُنَّ, like the earth, its examples, multiple earths. So he was asked, what does this verse mean? وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ مِثْلَهُنَّ, and the earth and the likes of the earth. What does this actually mean? So Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, and he mentions, قَالَ سَبْعَ أَرْضِينَ فِي كُلِّ أَرْضٍ نَبِيِّ كَنَبِيِّكُمْ وَآدَمْ كَآدَمْ وَنُوحْ كَنُوحْ وَإِبْرَاهِيمْ كَإِبْرَاهِيمْ وَعِيسَى وَعِيسَى. And this, what Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala mentions, is not from himself, because he doesn't have knowledge of the unseen. This was given to him by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when he explains this verse, he says, in each earth that there exists, so from the 7 earths, and in each heaven and earth that exists, in every earth there is a prophet like your prophet. And there is an Adam like Adam alayhi salam, and then there's a Nuh like Nuh alayhi salam, then there's an Ibrahim like Ibrahim alayhi salam, and there's an Isa like Isa alayhi salam. I don't want to go into obviously the aqidah points of this, the 50 rulings and all these things, but nonetheless, it does remind us of the Prophet ﷺ being a rahmah to all of the universes. That's why we say in the Quran every single day, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of all of the universes. So before, if they didn't know that multiple universes existed, and now science is showing us that it is possible, and they do possibly potentially exist. That's why we said from the beginning of time till today, Rabbil Alameen, not Rabbil Alam, Rabbil Alameen, of all of the universes. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Not just this dunya, all of the universes, all of the multiple universes that exist. That's why I just wanted to share that with you as well. So hopefully this will, put you at ease somewhat. But inshallah, we'll go into detail some other time related to this verse as well. So coming to the first part that I mentioned, which is talking about the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Almighty in the Quran mentions وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And this is a very, very beautiful, very, very powerful verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He mentions, and know, have yaqeen, have understanding, have the knowledge, not zan,
not the doubt, no, have the yaqeen, have the knowledge, know for sure, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ, that without a doubt, any iota of a doubt, أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is amongst you, is amongst you. Now we know that the Quran is for all time. It's not limited to the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's not limited to the time of the Sahaba Ikram. It's not limited to the time of the Tabi'een. It is for all time till the end of time, and even in Jannah it will still be there as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, that know for sure without a doubt the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is amongst you. And this is for the Sahaba Ikram, this is for the Tabi'een, the Taba Tabi'een, and it's also for us as well. He is amongst us. He is amongst us with his sunnah. He is amongst us with his message. He is amongst us with all of the things that he has taught us, with his guidance, and how he has brought us back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the great legacy that he has left behind. And also in a spiritual form, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is still alive, and even in a physical form, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram. He's prohibited the earth to consume the flesh of all of the Anbiya. Not just the Prophet, all of the Anbiya, the earth has been prohibited to consume the flesh or even touch the flesh of the Anbiya alayhi salam. So physically the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is alive because he gave his life, his wealth, everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah ta'ala mentions that those people who give their life in our way, then they are living, they are with us. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is alive physically, he is alive spiritually. And this verse yet again reminds us, أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, the Messenger is amongst you. Now the question that we have to ask ourselves, how much of the Messenger do you carry with you? That's a question that you need to ask yourself. We all claim to love the Prophet. We all claim to know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam somewhat, but is he truly with us? If your father is walking with you, when you're going down Winslow Road, when you're going down all these roads and alleys, you will think twice about doing something ridiculous and doing something stupid. You will think twice, and you think 3 times, because you know he is your father and he's next to you, and you're not supposed to do anything untoward. Similarly, if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is with you, he's part of you, then you will never go astray. You will always be guided because he is part of you and he's constantly guiding you to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you are following the steps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those steps that lead you back into the gardens of paradise, back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what it means to live with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to walk in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to come to that realization, that without a doubt the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is with us. He's with us and he's part of us. So this is an important question that we need to ask ourselves: how much is he a part of us, and how much do we allow him to be a part of us? Do we be a part of him when we need him, and we will be a part of him on the day of Qiyamah, or Ya Rasulullah, intercede for us? We'll be part of him then, or any other time when we need something that we ask. But is he part of us on a daily basis, wherever we go, however we may be? And this is something that we need to ask ourselves as well. So, coming back to the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is constantly and he is always with us. We need to come to that realization that he is with us as well. And famous people. And those people who are extremely famous, you will see that they won't come into the media all the time. They will come into the media where it's absolutely necessary to advertise themselves, to publicize a particular film or a program or things like that. They are not in the TV 24 hours a day. Because what happens is that the more exposure famous people have, the more obvious the defects become. So the more that you see a person, so if you see a sheikh once in a while and you see from afar, you have this great, you're in awe of that sheikh, and you have this amazing attraction towards that sheikh. The more you see the sheikh again and again, the less attracted you are, the less awe that you are in that person as well. And this goes the same for famous people. The more you see them, the more normal they become, and the more of the defects and the shortcomings and the failings that you see. And that's why the people who publicize celebrities, they always choose times for them to publicize them. They're not always constantly in the tabloid, in the media as well, because they realize that people will see their defects, see their shortcomings, and as a result they realize he's just a human being, and they'll start to go away from that. But look at the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would invite people to come and sit with him, to come and stay with him in the masjid, to come and walk with him, to come and travel with him, to come and eat with him, to go and join him in the wars that he participated in. And again, he would invite them. He wouldn't say, stay away from me, you have this image of me, I don't want to wreck this image, because this is what happens. If you have achieved something in your life and you have this particular image, you want people to maintain that image. But when people walk with you and talk with you and travel with you, that's when they realize who you truly are, what your traits are like, how patient you are, what your true feelings are about certain people and the circumstances that you are living in. The more you get to know a person, the more you actually move away from that person as well. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that if you truly want to know the haqiqat of a person, then travel with them, then dine with them, travel with them and dine with them. And the third one, it's not coming to my mind. But the point is, if you truly want to find out about another person, spend time with them. And the Sahaba Ikram and the Mushrikeen and the people of Quraysh, the Prophet ﷺ again and again would invite them, come and sit with me, come and sit with me, look at who I am, find any defects in me, and they could not find the defects in the Prophet ﷺ because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned and promised, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. He had the greatest of morals, greatest of character, the most perfect of character. This is the greatness of the Prophet ﷺ. And that is why even those people who denied the Prophet ﷺ and the message that he came with, they could never deny his virtues, they could never deny his character, they could never deny his greatness, because he was impeccable, he was impeachable, he was flawless because he was protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the Prophet ﷺ went with the army to conquer Makkah, he had 10,000 people with him. When they conquered Makkah and there was Fatih Makkah, and you don't see one Sahabi saying, I saw this bad trait about the Prophet ﷺ, I saw him do this, I saw him do that, he was unjust here, or he was doing this or that. And similarly, when he went into the Battle of Tabuk and all of the other battles, all of the Sahaba who had daily contact with him, they could never ever find defect in the Prophet ﷺ. And that is why they were so firm in their yaqeen, in their acknowledgement that this is undoubtedly the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala due to his greatness. And if we retrace the steps of the Prophet ﷺ, learn about him, about his seerah, about his youth, about his childhood, about his adulthood, his message, then we will only gravitate towards his greatness and realize that yes, this was indeed a great man. He was a great companion, he was a great friend, he was a great father, he was a great, all of these characters, he was a great person undoubtedly. So learn about the Prophet ﷺ and you will see that from his teachings, he was a great man. And even the Prophet ﷺ on the last Hajj of Hajjatul Wida, when he was there before 124,000 people, he was saying, convey my message to people, even if it's one sentence, even if it's one verse, convey my message that this is how he was, this is how he talked, this is how he walked, this is what his message was. And how many of us go about to our friends and family, read something and say, this is my beloved, this is the greatest of the Prophet ﷺ. He reminded us that it's incumbent upon us to share with those people who don't know about the Prophet ﷺ, who he was, what his maqam was, what his status was, and greatness was before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, he reminded us that never ascribe a lie, falsely attribute something to the Prophet ﷺ, for if you do that, then you are actually preparing your own grave in the fire of hell. So yes, we need to have a sense of caution in making sure that we authenticate our statements and make sure whatever we say is the correct statement of the Prophet ﷺ. But those statements that come to us and they are rigorously tested and authenticated, then we must accept them that this is the great shan of the Prophet ﷺ. Just try to imagine, try to envisage on the day of Qiyamah when there will be trillions and trillions and trillions of human beings all looking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, expecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be looking at all of mankind, He will not be looking at all of creation, He will be looking at the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who will be in prostration, and He will be saying to him, raise your head, O my beloved, irfa ra'saka ya Muhammad, raise your head, O my beloved, ask whatever you want, I will give that to you. All of the universe will be looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will be looking at the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that shows you the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the maqam al-mahmuda that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We will truly find out what that great maqam, that great status, and that great honor is for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on the day of Qiyamah. So the thing that I want to share with you in terms of the greatness is that don't think he's just an ordinary man. Yes, he was a man, because he needed to be created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like all of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was a man, he had the human composition, but he was no ordinary man. He was no ordinary man, he was no ordinary human being. So don't just think of him, he's just an ordinary person, and yes, I read about him once in my lifetime and that's it. No, make him part of your life, because if you want to become great, if you you want to become successful, if you want to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you must follow in the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. So, that's the relation to the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And I'll give you another further example in relation to that. Go home, for those people who are married, and I've given this an example in previous lectures as well. If you want to find out the haqiqat of a person, the reality of who a person is, then just go to their home and ask their wives what he's like. Wives, I said plural, wife. Ask the wife what he's really like, and the wife will tell you this is what he's really like. At work, he might be a different person, because you have a different facade at work. You have to be diligent, you have to be professional, you have to work in a particular way. When you come to the masjid, in the masjid, everybody's nice and humble and nice, so everybody's different here. When you're outside the masjid, you behave in a particular manner. When you're in your car and you turn up the radio, you're a different person as well. When nobody's watching, you're a completely different person as well. So if you want to find out the reality, the haqiqat of the person, ask the wife what the husband is really like, and she will tell you. Because she spends day and night with him, and she knows what he's like. She knows his true colors. Similarly, ask the father, ask the mother what the son is really like, what that person is really like, and they will tell you, I know what he's like, I know what his traits are like, I know what his attributes are like, and the parents will tell you the reality of their child. But go, and then you will find out what the person is like. But then we go to Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she describes the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam that he was the most benevolent, he was the most kind, he was the most gracious, he was the most merciful, and he was the most forgiving. He was always there for his family, he was always there for his friends. This is how Sayyidah Khadija described the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and that is why when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam returned from the first revelation of Jibreel alayhi salam, she said, I swear by Allah, your Lord will never disgrace you, because you do all of these things because you are the greatest of man. And we go to Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she knew the haqiqat of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and she says, Kana khuluquhu al-Qur'an, that his khuluq, his character, his behavior, he was a walking, talking, living embodiment of the Qur'an. This is the reality that we find. So outwardly, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam could have had a particular persona, could have had a particular facade with the Sahaba, with his friends, and dealt differently with them. But at home, there's only so much bravado that you can keep up. The reality will always come out. Your impatience will always come out. All of these things, your anger will come out. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, all of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, not one, not two, all of the wives, they only talked about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the highest esteem, in the most positive of words, because this was his reality. The same reality at home, the same reality outside. So we need to have a check on our reality. What are we truly like? At home, we like this macho man, and we're the king of our castle and our home, and we dictate whatever happens. And outside, we behave in a different way. In the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we behave in a different way. Make sure you are the same as you are on the inside, as you are on the outside. And this is the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, and that not many people have nobody has been able to achieve this balance, have been able to achieve this greatness, that whatever is on the inside, that is the only thing that is on the outside. So make sure you try to retain that balance in your life, become a good human being at home, at your workplace, in your community, with your friend, and be the same human being when you are standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, kana khuluquhu al-Qur'an, that his character, his nobility, his behavior was the living Qur'an. And how much of us are the living embodiment of the Qur'an? How many times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive again and again and again? He forgives in the Qur'an. How many times do we forgive our wife? Do we forgive our children? Do we forgive our friends? How many things are there in the Quran? How many of us bring those things to light? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought all of the rulings, all of the hukms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to light. And this is what we need to do. If we want to become great, we must follow the greatest of examples. We must follow the greatest of personalities, the greatest of the person who came and blessed this earth with his presence, which is none other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Lastly, related to the greatness of the Prophet alaihi wasallam, I want to give you an example of the enemy. Now, you can find out from your wife, from your parents, from your family. You can find out from your colleagues what a person is like. But then your enemy will know you a bit better than everybody else. Because your enemy, he hates you, he despises you, he has this and hatred towards you. So he will know you even a bit more better than the other people that are around you. So let's go to the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ and see what they have to say regarding his personality, regarding his character. And we go to this beautiful example of Heraclius, who was the Roman emperor. He was the Roman emperor, and Abu Sufyan, as you know, he was the greatest and the most staunchest of enemies for the Prophet Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan, these were the most staunchest of enemies of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Abu Sufyan, he is in the Roman territory, and the Roman Emperor Heraclius, he calls him and he says, what is this person that I hear about? Who is he? Where is he from? Tell me something about him. So then Abu Sufyan, he goes and he stands before the Roman Emperor and he says, I want all of your companions, all of your friends to stand behind you. And every time that you make a statement, if you are making a false statement, if you are lying, then they must correct you immediately. They must correct you immediately. So then he said, fine. So Abu Sufyan, he stood in front of the Roman Emperor Heraclius and he said, I am the most closest to Muhammad in terms of his relation, and I know him better than anybody else, and all of these people will testify that the statement that I'm about to give is the true statement. So Abu Sufyan stands in front of him and he said, if I lie, then my companions, my friends, they should contradict me. And then Abu Sufyan, he added, this is at the end of the entire episode, he says, by Allah, this is the statement of Abu Sufyan, he says, by Allah, had I not been afraid of my companions labeling me as a liar, I would not have spoken the truth about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So just to keep face with his friends and to keep face in front of the Roman Emperor, he spoke the truth. And look at the truth that came out from the very tongue and the very mouth of Abu Sufyan. So the Roman Emperor, he asked him, Heraclius, he asked him, does he belong to a good noble family? This is what he asked. And then he replied, he said, yes, he does. And then he said, was there anybody from his family or from his ancestors who was a king? And then he replies to that, he says, no, there wasn't anybody from his lineage who was a king. And then he says, do the noble people, the rich people follow him, or do the poor people follow him? And he replied that the poor people follow him, not the noble people, they follow him. And then he says, Heraclius, the Roman emperor, he says, are his people increasing day by day, or are they decreasing? And he said, they're increasing, people are coming into the fold of Islam day by day as well. And then he asked, those people who do accept the faith, do they become disenchanted, and then do they become dissatisfied with the religion, and do they walk away, or are they still in the religion? And he said, yes, they are still in the religion because they are completely absorbed into the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he asked, have you ever had a war with him? And he said, yes, we've had a war with him. Sometimes he is victorious, and other times we are victorious as well. And the conversation carries on, and he says, what is his message? What is he coming with? And he says, he tells us to worship only one Allah, one Lord. And he says to only worship him and not worship any other idol or statue. And he says to make sure that you speak the truth, to establish the prayer, to always be honest, to be upright, to have good relationship with your family and with your friends. These are all of the messages that Abu Sufyan gave to the Roman emperor at that time, Heraclius. So then, after absorbing all of this information, Heraclius, he said that all apostles that came, they came for the poor people, and the poor people followed them because this is their true message, because they came to empower the poor people, because the noble people already, they are doing injustices to the poor people. So the reason why the poor people are following him shows that he's actually a great man and shows that he's a true messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how is it that this man, he could never lie against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so why would he ever lie about anything else that he's saying as well? And similarly, he said that all the messages that he has given you about speaking the truth, being honest, being upright, this is the message of the previous messengers as well, and then whatever he is saying, he must be the true messenger. Then he concludes at the end, Heraclius, the Roman emperor, he says, if what you have said is true, then he will very soon occupy this place beneath my feet. This is the statement of Heraclius. And he says, he will occupy the place between my feet. And he was going to appear because it was mentioned in the scriptures as well. And had I known that he was going to appear in my lifetime, in my generation, then I would go out to him definitely, and I would immediately meet him, and I would go and I would certainly wash his feet. This is the statement of Heraclius, the Roman emperor, and this is the statement of the most staunchest enemy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Sufyan, who had to speak the truth. He could never he could never put a blemish or taint the character or the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this should remind us yet again that if you truly want to find out the reality of a person, find out, spend time with them, travel with them, dine with them, sleep with them, you'll find out what they're truly like. Similarly, find out from their wife, find out from their children, find out from their families and friends, find out from their enemy. And you can see that throughout the time of the Prophet ﷺ, nobody has ever been able to point a finger at the character and at the personality of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if there is a fault, and people today, in this day and age, are pointing fingers to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and making false accusations and false claim, then it is our shortcoming, it is our failing, it is our lacking in knowing the reality and the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For if we knew him and he lived with us, and we realize that he's with us, part of it, and nafikum Rasulullah, that everybody outside of the world would say, this is a great person, because he is following a great person as well. Because we would be people who would only speak the truth, would always be there for justice, would always be there for the truth, and all of these things. But unfortunately, we have gone away from the greatest of personalities, and therefore we are also failing in our responsibility towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, this was a brief glimpse about the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now we come on to the second part, which is the world before the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So let's look at the world. I'm just going to share with you two examples, the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire. There's so many other empires at that time, so many other civilizations that were obviously at that time, but we don't have the time to go into all of that. So we look at the world before the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, namely the two great empires, the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire. They were both imperialistic empires, and throughout the empires, injustice was rampant. It was widespread. There was no justice whatsoever for the poor people, for the pauper, for those people who were destitute, or for, especially for women as well. There was absolutely no justice whatsoever, and society was divided based on race, based on religion, and based on how much power you had and how much wealth you could accumulate as well. And the Roman Empire, you can see that they had the gladiators, they had the Colosseum, and so many other things were happening, and people were being killed just for the sake of entertainment. And in the Persian Empire, they were sleeping with their mothers, and they were sleeping with their own daughters, and they were killing their own daughters and worshipping the sun and the moon and worshipping the fire. So all of this was happening in the history, and you can see that the society was degrading. The society would become more and more decadent as time was going, and they were becoming more and more vicious to each other, and all of the good characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had embedded within the human being of husn al-zan, of good akhlaq, of tawbah, of istighfar, of shukr, of forgiveness, of mercy, of altruism, all of these things had been completely removed, and Europe itself was in the dark ages. So the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire, they were doing what they were doing. But at the same time, the European Empire, Europe at that time was in its dark ages, and ignorance was absolutely widespread as well. And polygamy was common, as well as many other things that were happening in the European Empire as well. And for that, I'd just like to give you one quote of the historian Wells. He mentions that the world has never witnessed in its history a darker, worse, more desperate era than the 6th century AD. The world was totally paralyzed, and Europe resembled a decaying body of a giant dead man. This is how a British-born man, historian, is describing the harm, the state of Europe in the 6th century AD. That the world, especially Europe, is a decaying, diseased, dead man. And he mentioned that this is the world that was there at that time. However, he goes on and he concludes in his book, he says, until the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is when the world changed. He's not a Muslim, he didn't accept Islam, but he had to admit to the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how he came and how he removed people from their ignorance, how he removed people from their pride, from their arrogance, from the dark ages, and brought them to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the British historian saying, until the arrival of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is why a great shaykh says, وَلِدَ الْهُدَى فَالْكَائِنَاتُ دِيَا, that the guidance was born, the guidance was sent into this dunya, فَالْكَائِنَاتُ دِيَا, then the entire universe was illuminated with the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are historians, these are the people describing their own civilization, that this is how people were living, and this is how rampant and how bad the society was before the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, before the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ, we could see the society and how decadent it was. However, when the Prophet ﷺ did arrive, there was no more, the society that he was in was extremely hostile. We might think that the country that we're living in now, in the UK, they're very, very hostile towards Muslims. Europeans are very hostile towards Muslims. Americans and so many other countries, they may be hostile towards Muslims, but this cannot be the case, because the most hostility that was ever seen was towards the Prophet ﷺ in his time, towards the Sahaba Ikram, the persecution and all of the things that they did to the Prophet ﷺ. But in spite of that, you should not lose hope, because the light was there, the guidance was there. The Sahaba Ikram used that guidance. They held on fast to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the Prophet ﷺ. And with that guidance, slowly and surely, they came out of the darkness and came into the light and came back onto the path of Jannah, back onto the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even in the society that we live in, irrespective of how hostile it may be to Muslims, individually or collectively, always remember and always realize that there is hope, because we still have the Quran, we still have the Sunnah, we still have the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So never despair and never lose hope. All you have to do is rekindle your relationship, connect yourself back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that guidance will emerge yet again. And that guidance yet again will illuminate not only your heart, not your family, not your community, but all of mankind and all of the universe again. It's up to you to rekindle that light, rekindle that relationship, and strengthen that relationship back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at where he took that civilization, the Persian civilization, the Roman civilization, the European civilization, the Arabs, and what they used to do and how they used to bury their own daughters. Look at what he did and how he transformed that nation in a mere 23 years. Look at what he achieved, and why is it that we cannot achieve something similar? Of course we can, if you follow in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The minimum that you will be able to do is at least change yourself. Change yourself and change your immediate family members. You'll be able to do that, if not be able to change the world. So look at the Prophet ﷺ and how he changed humanity, how he changed the face of the earth, and in 23 years, how he changed Mecca, how he changed Medina, how he changed Jerusalem, all of these countries, how he changed. Why? Because he changed it through his mercy. He changed it through his yaqeen and through his connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So follow yet again in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you will be able to bring about that change and that transformation back in your life and also in the life of other people as well. So we see when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, the empires that were at their peak, they collapsed because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent a messenger from among them to reform them, to change them, and to remove the injustices and to provide the justice back to mankind. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. That we, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing us, He's talking to us. You are the best of nations that I have sent forth unto all of mankind. Why are we the best of nations? تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. That we encourage people to do good, to always do that which is good, to always do that which is right. وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. And we prohibit those people from doing that which is wrong, that which is devious, that which is grievous, that which is sinful, that which is transgressing the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he ordered ma'roof and he prohibited munkar, the Sahaba Ikram did that as well. Look at the change that took place in Mecca. Look at the change that took place in Medina. Look at the change that took place throughout the Islamic Empire and throughout the world. Why? Because they remain on this motto, on this slogan of ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar. We changed all of the European Empire, and they took from us, they took from our civilization, they took from all of the good things that we had. But we were there, and we were the leaders as long as we did amar bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar. But when we went back towards injustice, when we went back to rishwat, went back to lying, cheating, deceiving, and encouraging other people to deceive, then we destroyed our own civilization. Then we became decadent as well. And the Europeans, who took all of our good traits, took all of our rules of justice, of equality, all of these things, and they established their own empire, and they are striving, and they look at how they are and how they are thriving throughout the world, because they have taken our lessons. They have taken from the lessons of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they have become great, and we have become so low in this dunya because we have not only walked away from the Quran, but we've also walked away from the Sunnah, walked away from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran is a manual, yes, it's a manual, and it's very, very confusing as well at times. It can be extremely perplexing. It can be extremely confusing to the person who's not well versed in the verses of the Quran and in grammar and in all these other subjects as well. How do we understand the Quran? We understand the Quran through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the living Quran. He was the great example of the living Quran. So if you want to become successful again as an individual, as a family, as a community, then you must go back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and establish how did he find so much success. In spite of all of the hostility, in spite of all of the enemies that he had, and the confrontations that he had, all of the problems that he faced, in spite of all of that, he still achieved success and triumph. How did he do that? We need to retrace those things, and we can find that success again in our life as well. So he came and he transformed the Arabian Peninsula. He transformed Makkah, he transformed Medina, he transformed Taif, he transformed all of humanity. And all of those tribes that used to argue with each other, that used to fight, and they used to live a life of looting, of kidnapping, of slavery, of killing, of deceit, and also burying their own children. Sometimes they would bury their child, their daughters at the age of 7, and sometimes they would bury them immediately. This is the type of society Prophet ﷺ was in, and even Sayyidina Umar Khattab in the time of Jahiliyyah, when he did come to Islam, they asked Sayyidina Umar Khattab that didn't you have a brain at that time? I.e., in the time of Jahiliyyah, didn't you have a brain? And look at the reply. Look at the reply of Sayyidina Umar Khattab. He said, yes, we did. Yes, we did. We did have a brain, but we did not have the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just thinking that you have a brain, you might achieve everything in this dunya, you won't be able to achieve anything until you have the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that guidance, that mood which comes from the Quran, that mood which comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until you have the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam with you, then irrespective of the brain that you may have, doesn't matter how much of an Einstein that you may become, you will not find the true success, you will not find the true contentment, you will not find the true tranquility in your life, and also success in the hereafter, until you have the guidance which is none other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the reply of Sayyidina Umar Khattab, that yes, we did have aql, but we didn't have the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at the Arabs at that time. They had 360 idols, we know that, and they placed them on top of the Kaaba as well as inside the Kaaba as well. And sometimes, just like what we do now as well, what they used to do is that they used to have full-size statues and idols in their homes and also in the Kaaba and on the Kaaba as well. When they used to travel, they used to have a miniature version of their idol in their pockets. They used to take it for traveling because it's more convenient. And at other times, what they used to do is make their idols out of dates, kujur. So they used to take the kujur and they used to shape the kujur into their idols. And when they used to travel and they used to feel hungry, then they used to eat their own very gods. You know? This is what they used to do. So this is the type of society that they were in, how they used to worship statues that they've created themselves and have mini gods in their pockets and also be eating their gods when they felt a bit peckish and a bit hungry as well. So this is the society. Women had absolutely no rights whatsoever. They were treated as slaves. Even the women who were married, they had no financial rights, no rights to inheritance whatsoever. And when the Prophet ﷺ came, he gave them their right to inheritance. He gave them the equal right to live as an individual human being, to make their own decisions, and to live a life to their own accord. This is what the Prophet ﷺ came, and he stopped the practice of burying the girls at a very, very young age, and also at a younger age as well. Even the Sahaba Ikram in the time of Jahiliyyah, who had buried their daughters, when they would sit before the Prophet ﷺ, they would never be able to raise their head before the Prophet ﷺ. There would always be constant shame, constant regret. What have we done? And this is what they used to do. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, that child that you buried, you will ask him on the day of Qiyamah, for what sin, for what reason was I buried? What have I done that I deserve for you to bury me at such a young age, at the time of birth, or even at the time of 6-7 years of age? What the Arabs used to do, they used to dress their child up and say, look, we're going to get you married off. So they used to dress them up, they used to take them far away in the desert, and then they used to dig the grave, and then the daughter used to help the father dig the grave. What are you doing? I need to do this. And she used to help the father, and then they used to place her in there, and then they used to bury her, and she would be screaming that, what are you doing? And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. In other verses of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that when a boy is born, you are very, very happy, and when a girl is born, then your face goes dark. And we have to be very, very careful, because this is the same thing coming back into our society. Go to Pakistan, go to India, go to Bangladesh, and they say, This is their very reaction. You had a girl, you had a girl. When you say you had a boy, and then their face lights up. And then they say, where's the laddu, where's the mithai? And when it's a girl, it happens in our society. It's coming back. This is not what the Prophet ﷺ came with. This is not how he transformed mankind. He came to bring about equality for our daughters and for our sons as well. why you can possibly see a reason for why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed only the sons of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to mature and to remain alive, and He left all of the daughters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to live alive and to get married and carry on with their lives as well. So there's some hikmah in that as well, to remind people that sons are not everything. And just because you have sons doesn't mean you will be successful and they will work for you and you will be happy and living a happy life. No, the true happiness is with your daughters as well as with your sons as well. And if you recall a few weeks ago when I shared with you the dua that the Prophet ﷺ said when his son Ibrahim passed away, he said, إِنَّ الْعَيْنَ تَدْمَعُ وَالْقَلْبَ يَحْزُنُ وَلَا نَقُولُ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا خَيْرٍ. That indeed the eyes, they are tearing. The tears are coming out from my eyes, and the heart is sorry. The heart is is hurting due to the pain of the loss of my child. However, we only say that which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the end of that he says, وَإِنَّ عَلَيْكَ يَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ لَمَحْزُونُونَ. That for indeed, for the loss of you, O Ibrahim, we are indeed in a state of mourning. This is the dua Prophet ﷺ said for his son, but he loved his daughters even more than his sons, because every time he would go and he would see Sayyidah Fatima Zahra radiallahu ta'ala anha, he would stand up for her and he would hug her and he would kiss her on the forehead and he would kiss her hands, and every time she would see him, she would be exactly the same. So why is it that we are lacking in our love towards our daughters when the Prophet ﷺ showed so much love for his daughters? So we need to remember the guidance is not just in terms of the religious guidance that he came with, in terms of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, siyam, qiyam, sujood, hajj, zakat, all this. No, the guidance for human beings, the guidance on how to be a good father, how to be a good son, how to be a good husband, how to be a good neighbor, how to be a good leader, how to be a good human being. This is the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with. So why is it we ignore all of these things and we just use the guidance which is the religious guidance? No, you can't pick and choose. You have to take all of the guidance from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So imagine, the love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had, not only for his own children, but for all of the companions and all of the other human beings that were around him at that time. So irrespective of somebody who is a Muslim, who is not a Muslim, still treat them with respect, still treat them with dignity, because they are still a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today they may be a non-Muslim, but tomorrow they may accept Islam, but due to your character they may stay away from Islam. So always treat people with dignity, with honor, with izzat, with waqar, because tomorrow they may become a better Muslim than you. And who are you to reject the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Always give them the guidance that you have received from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of being a good human being, of being an honest and upright human being. So this is the hal, the state of the civilization at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how he came and he changed and transformed the people and their behavior and their characteristics and their traits towards their own children, towards their family members, and towards the community as well. How many of us have changed those people that are around us? How many of us even have knocked on our neighbors' doors and said, look, it's the month of Ramadan, here is some food, we are fasting, and this is the reason why we are fasting, and this is how it will benefit us. How many of us take the guidance from Allah, take the guidance from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and share that guidance of being good human beings, being good, honest, upright citizens of this world, especially of this country as well. So we come to Makkah, a few more examples in relation to the civilization at that time. Makkah at that time, as you know, it was a religious destination, it was a financial capital at that time. People from China, from all the world would come, and the centerpiece would be in Makkah. So when the Prophet ﷺ, he came with this new message, they didn't have a problem with the message in itself, but they realized that this is going to change the status quo, that they received financial aid from all the different countries for putting statues on top of the Kaaba. So if we remove the statues, that money will no longer be coming in. And similarly, we allow them to come and worship their gods. All of that brings in revenue, all of that brings in a lot of money. And now if we remove all of these idols, and we stop worshipping all of these things, we're going to have a lot of loss, and nobody's going to come here, nobody's going to pay us, and we're not going to be rich anymore, we're not going to be able to control the people anymore. So this was one of the main reasons for them rejecting the message of the Prophet ﷺ. They couldn't reject his character, they couldn't reject his statement or his message, but they only rejected it due to this financial loss, due to the loss of power, to the loss of control, and to the loss of finance as well. However, this is a deception of the shaitan. And this happens to us in our life as well. What the shaitan does is that he puts a financial interest in front of you, and then he puts a religious action that you have to do. So you weigh in front of yourself. You say, okay, if I go and read namaz today, I might lose my job. Or if I go and I'm late back from the masjid and I'm 10 minutes late, then I'm not going to get paid for those 10 minutes. Or I'm going to get a disciplinary action. Or if this happens, if I do this religious action, I'm going to lose out financially. I'm going to lose out, I'm not going to get the promotion. This is not going to happen, that's not going to happen. And this is exactly this is what Shaitan did. He went into all of the leaders of Quraysh and said, look, this is going to happen. If you follow him and his message, all of the statues will go, all of your money will go, all of your wealth will go, all of your control will go. So they, purely based on interest, financial interest, they said, no, we're not going to follow you. And this is what happens in our life as well. That we look at, we say, religion, work. Where is the benefit? And we always incline towards the benefit, and we walk away from the religion. However, we must remain upright. We must remain steadfast and always choose the option which is the right option, which is the option of guidance, the option which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So take a moment to reflect today, how many times throughout the year have we had an option before us, we've had a choice that we've had to make, we've always gone towards the dunya, always gone towards that which will benefit us, our family, our friends, and not that which will benefit the deen, not that which will bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or make us retrace the steps of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But despite of all of the opposition the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had, he still carried on and persevered. And he used three things that I want to share with you. The first thing that he did, that he took advantage of the season of Hajj, where all of the people would come in, and he started doing da'wah with the people. Similarly, in the month of Ramadan, there's an opportunity for you to do da'wah, for you to spread the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing that he did is that he used the Quraysh, the local people, and he used the language that he had, which was the Arabic language, and he spread the message as well. For those people who are living here, we must use the English language. We must use this effectively to engage with other people and spread the message and share with them the message of Islam. So Prophet used the opportunity of Hajj in the very season, used the opportunity of the language as well, and also he used the opportunity of understanding the people and their mentality. The Quraysh people, they were not slaves, they were free people, so they understood what it meant to be, what it meant to have liberty and freedom and all of these things. So he used that and to spread Islam and say, look, Islam gives equality and freedom to everybody. Remove yourself from the slavery of worshipping statues and idols and all of these things. So he used all of these methods to bring people closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the method that people will know in terms of management is the SWOT method, which is the SWOT. The S is for strength. So the Prophet ﷺ realized where his strength was. Strength was within his language, within his tribe, with his friends and family. So he used the strength to his advantage. Similarly, he looked at all of the weakness of the people at that time, the mental weakness, the physical weakness. So he used that, and once you realize the weakness of your opponent, then you can do something to overcome that opponent as well. And then he used the opportunity of Hajj in the various seasons to spread the message of Islam as well. And then he assessed the threat at that time. He assessed the threat of the Quraysh, he assessed the threat of all of these people in the tribe, and then he migrated to Medina, and then he recouped, and got more strength and came back and conquered Mecca as well. So similarly, you need to have a process that you use in your life and make sure that you follow that through and make your guidance and make your your da'wah most effective, just the way the Prophet ﷺ did. But irrespective of the method that you use, what you must always keep in mind is justice is very, very important. Always maintain justice. Always make sure that you put that which is right before you and not which is beneficial for you, financially beneficial or any other form of benefit for you. Always put that which is right, whether it's that right and that justice is for another Muslim or a non-Muslim or any other person. Always stand up for justice. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ. Always stand up for justice. It doesn't just say for Muslims, for non-Muslims alike. Always stand up for justice. And I'll give you one example of the Prophet ﷺ, one example of the Sahabi, and inshallah we'll come to the last bit, which is the birth. I know I'm taking a bit more time than anticipated. But anyway, the justice of the Prophet ﷺ was such that a child, a ghulam, I'm a ghulam, the child is also in Arabic called ghulam. A child was sitting on the right side of the Prophet ﷺ, and you know that whenever you begin something, you always begin from the right. So before the Prophet ﷺ, he had the leaders of tribes in Medina. So, and they became very, very thirsty. So the Prophet ﷺ, as a good host, and as any other person would do, would naturally give water to your host and to your guest. But the justice of Islam dictates that you begin from your right. You begin from your right. So the Prophet ﷺ went to the ghulam, that child who was sitting on his right, and he said to him, do you give me permission to offer the drink, to offer the water to the older people first? And the ghulam, the boy, he replied, no, I will not let anyone else take this generous offer that you are giving before me, because I have the right, I have the most right before any other person. And the Prophet ﷺ, at this moment in time, he would have thought, he's just a kid, he's just a ghulam, who's going to listen to him, doesn't matter, it's insignificant, these people are the leaders, and they'll give me more benefit, they might bring in more money, they might do all of these things. He could have thought of all of these things, and we probably would have thought of all of these things, but the Prophet didn't think of any of these things, and he said, you're absolutely right, this is your right, and he started with him. And the boy drank, when he was finished, then the Prophet ﷺ went to the next person, until he reached the leaders of Quraysh. So this is how we need to live our life, with justice, of equality, irrespective of who may be in front of you, what the benefits may be. When you need to begin, always begin from the right, always do that which is right according to the Quran and according to the Sunnah. Another example of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, and we know that when he used to walk on the street, the shaitan used to take the other path. The shaitan used to be very, very scared of him. But in spite of that, even human beings used to be very, very scared of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab. So whenever children used to see Sayyidina Umar, they used to walk on the other side of the street, because they realized he's a very, very first man. So they used to run to the other side, except for one child. Now look at this beautiful example. So all the children would be running on the other side, and only one child would stay on the same side of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, and his name was Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr. So Sayyidina Umar asked him, why do you not run? All the other kids, they run away. Why do you not run away like your friends? And Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he replied, he said, the road is not so narrow that I need to make a way, and I have done nothing wrong to turn away. Why should I walk away? I've done nothing wrong. So why do I need to take a separate route? If you've done something wrong, then fine, you take a separate route. But no, this road is equally for me as it is equally for you, and I have done nothing wrong, so why should I take a separate route? So he said, Umar he looked at him and he said that this boy will achieve a high status. This is the statement of Sayyidina Umar, and we see that Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he became a Khalifa in the time of the Prophet, after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, because he knew what his right was, he knew what justice was, that everything is equal. So always stand up for that which is right, always maintain justice and equality in your life, and don't just walk away and be afraid of things, and always do things the way the Prophet ﷺ did. So now we come finally to the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the third part of today's lecture. So the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, before we come to that, who is the Prophet? His name is Muhammad, as we know, ﷺ. His grandfather chose the name for him. His grandfather, Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, he chose the name for the Prophet ﷺ after his birth and after the circumcision of the Prophet ﷺ. He had a banquet, as we have even in our tradition as well. We have the banquet, and then he called all of his friends and family, and he said, I have named him Muhammad. And they asked him, why have you deviated from all of the names of the various statues and idols, and why have you named him Muhammad? And he said, I have been inspired. I have been inspired, and I want his name to be most praised in this dunya, and also to be most praised in the hereafter as well. And we see that the name of the Prophet ﷺ, which is Muhammad, it means praised most often. So in terms of quantity, there is no other person who is more praised than the Prophet ﷺ as a human being. This is the name of Muhammad. And we see throughout the world, every single day in your salah, in your salatul salam, every time everybody is sending hundreds and millions of salatul salam and durood upon the Prophet ﷺ. And similarly, his name is Ahmad as well. And Ahmad means praised as well, but in terms of the quality. So Muhammad is in terms of the quantity, and Ahmad is in terms of the quality of the praise of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is the name of the Prophet ﷺ. And what is his full name? This is his lineage as well. I just wanted to share that with you today. So the name of the Prophet ﷺ is Muhammad ibn Abdullah, ibn Abdul Muttalib, ibn Hashim, ibn Abdul Zanat, ibn Abdul Qusay, ibn Kilab, ibn Murrah, ibn Ka'ab, ibn Lu'ay, ibn Ghalib, ibn Fihr, and Fihr was the father of the Quraysh, and it goes all the way back to Adnan, who was the descendant of Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam, and connects back to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of his lineage, is connected to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he has a great nobility connected back to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, because he is known as the great father of Islam, great grandfather of Islam. So it's connected to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this was just the kunya, the lineage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I wanted to share with you one very, very important thing related to this, that the lineage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is impeccable, is absolutely pure. Many people, or some people in this day and age, they have come to the conclusion that the parents, na'uzubillah, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they were not guided, they would be worshipping idols, they were doing this, doing that, na'uzubillah min zalik. This is not the case whatsoever. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, want to reassure you, you must have this conviction and have this firm belief that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself is pure, and the lineage and the connection that he had is also pure as well. The Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose me from the best of tribes, He chose me from the best of humans, He chose me from the best of nations, and He's the purest of all. The Prophet ﷺ is the purest of all nations. So there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever in terms of the aqidah and the belief of the parents of the Prophet ﷺ. And there's two opinions, and both are equally correct. One is that they were Ahlul Fitrah. Ahlul Fitrah basically means that they were on the default position of understanding and knowing there is only one Lord, one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the second opinion is that they were on the millat, the path of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Whether you choose this option of they were following the path of Ibrahim alayhi salam, or whether you choose the primordial nature, the default position of them, believing in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, either one is fine, but you should never ever go to the third position, which is some people falsely claim that the parents of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were mushriks and they used to worship idols and stuff. This is not the case whatsoever. The leadership is pure, and he came from a pure lineage, and he is the most perfect of all creation. There is no blemish on him, or his parents, or his descendants whatsoever. And that is why in the Quran, sorry, in namaz, every single day we say, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْحِسَابُ. And we send salutations upon the Prophet and his family and his offspring. All of these things we do, and we send salutations upon the Prophet and his parents as well. The Prophet himself would go to the grave of his mother and he would do dua there for her as well. And similarly, he always reminded people to make sure you do the dua for their parents. So there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever in terms of the purity of the lineage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that was related to his lineage, and inshallah tomorrow we'll carry on and we'll learn more about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But at the end, I remind you that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on Monday, which is the majority opinion, the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, which is corresponding to 20th of April 570 AD, and this is 50 days before the year of the elephant. And we know what happened when Abraha came with his elephant to destroy the Kaaba, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected the Kaaba, not just because it was the Kaaba, it is his home. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala couldn't allow the Kaaba to be destroyed because the idols would be destroyed as well. However, he protected the Kaaba because the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was imminent. So he wanted Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come and himself remove the idols and statues from the Kaaba and everything else that was there in society at that time. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to understand the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to understand the climate and the conditions that he came in, and how he changed and transformed the community and those people at that time, and how his message is a guidance not just for religious guidance, but for physical guidance, for social guidance, and for all forms of guidance as well. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us all and to give us the ability to follow sincerely in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And remember those 6 points that I've shared with you, and make sure you check those 6 points every single day. Tomorrow, please join me once again, and then we'll learn more about the childhood of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he overcame the challenges in his childhood as well, and maintained taqwa, and maintain discipline, and also remain steadfast in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa quli qawli hadha wa astaghfirullah li wa lakum.